Welcome to the G5 Hive in our next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. Today we'll be heading over to the Mountain West Conference and taking a look at the Boise State Broncos, who had an amazing 2024 season. They finished 12-2 and were a perfect 7-0 in the Mountain West on their way to a fifth Mountain West championship. They also were the group of five representative in the college football playoffs, and they were the 3 seed. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with their spring game on April 19th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is a Boise State beat writer for the Idaho Statesman. He is an AP Top 25 voter. In his first year at Boise, he was named the 2024 Idaho Sports Reporter of the Year. He is Sean Goodwin. Sean can be found on X at Sean Bronco Beat. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Luke, what an intro. I appreciate it. It was hype. I could tell by the tone. I loved it. I appreciate the shout out of the award. And I have to say, Ashton Jenksy partly has his hand is on part of that award. I will say, great season. I like to think of myself as a good reporter, but Ashton Jenksy helped a lot because, yeah, hell of a season to join the piece.
I mean, who would have thought? I mean, all those accolades that he got, and then propping up you to get this award. I mean, it's probably. I mean, are you sending the trophy his way, or are you going to keep that?
It might be the most impressive thing he's done. At least the most important. I'll send him a picture of it. I'll sign it.
Okay. Well, for those tuning into the G5 Hive for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what this journey was like covering Boise State in your first year?
Yeah, so I guess I always have to address the accents in Englishmen speaking football. But yeah, from Liverpool, England, moved to the States in 2011, went to KU, had to go through some dark years. Les Miles, David Beatty, wasn't great. And I've lived in Boise now for 3 and a bit years. I've been on the Boise State beat this past year. We kind of touched it, just a crazy way to start this job. I remember I got the position in August, 2-3 weeks before the season started, and there was all this chatter about Ashton Jenksy and how, they were giving out Heisman, like, memorabilia and stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool, that's fun. Like, we'll see. And then I remember going down to Georgia Southern, his 6-touchdown, 267-yard game. And I remember sitting there like, oh, this is what kind of year it's going to be. And yeah, it didn't disappoint.
Well, for those not familiar with the Broncos' offensive style, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so it's fun. I think Jenksy's helped this kind of the moniker of running back you. You kind of heard it down the years of Doug Martins, Ian Johnson, Ashton Jenksy now. It has been the last couple of years a bit more of a ground and pound, keeping the ball on the ground. And going forward, going into 2025, the offense, the coaching staff is saying they want to get more of a 50-50 balance between running and passing the ball. Do I see that this coming season? I think it'll probably be a little bit more 60-40, 70-30 still. It's it'll wear you down. The ball's going to stay on the ground for good chunks of the game. That's what you can expect out of Boise State.
Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that's the quarterback. Coming into 2024, the question at quarterback is it 5-star USC transferred Malachi Nelson, or is it Maddox Madsen? Well, Ron Counts was on the show last year, and he mentioned it would be Maddox Madsen. Well, he was right. And what a season it was. He threw for 3,014 yards, 23 touchdowns, and had 6 interceptions as he helped the Broncos in that unbelievable season. Malachi Nelson has moved on to UTEP. That leaves Max Cutforth as the only other quarterback on this roster who took a snap in 2024. How did Madsen look in the spring?
He looked about as good as a player can look with no competition. He's looked fine. He's looked clean. From what we've seen, it's been great for him as well. In Boise State brought back Zach Hill, quarterback coach as well. He was at Boise in 2016, 2019, and he went to Arizona. I think he was at Seattle, the Seahawks for a while. And he's came back to Boise State now, and it's kind of giving Magson the opportunity to work directly with a QB coach and not the offensive coordinator who, has got the hands in 10 different buckets. So, we've really seen him working more on the technical parts of his game. It's the footwork, the passing, and a big part is finding men downfield, which just over spring already, you see he's looking a little bit more confident, a little bit more capable of, getting the ball in the air and finding those guys down the field.
Well, for those not familiar with Madsen's game, how would you describe it?
Luke, you kind of touched it in your intro with him. He had 6 interceptions last season, but 3 of those came in basically the last quarter of the Fiesta Bowl, when Boise State was obviously scrambling for points, just tossing the ball up, and half of his interceptions came in 15, 20 minutes. Smart and intelligent. He's going to go through his progressions. He's going to typically pick a high percentage pass most of the time. He won't attempt the 50-50 balls as much. He's not going to be looking downfield at his wide receivers, running 30, 40 yards. But like I said, that's kind of what I'm hoping to see in 2025. Other than that, he's a guy, he's happy to run out of the pocket. If he sees a hole, he'll take a hit. I remember Dirk Cutter last year was a little bit noisy now and again when Magson would go for that hole and try and pick up an extra couple of yards and take a big hit. But he's he's an intelligent quarterback. And for all of the flack he got last year, I think he proved himself. And I don't think anyone is complaining that he's the starter going into this coming season.
Well, it's pretty nice when you could hand the ball off to number 2 last season. But Genty's off to the Raiders. We'll get to the running back room in a little bit. But what kind of jump are you hoping to see from Maddox in 2025?
Kind of like touch, it's hitting those, the deep post and the go balls. Because we've seen once he gets to the red zone and once he's in that 10 to 20 yards region, he can hit the corner routes and, he can put some whip on the ball and he can find his receivers great. It's when we're talking more about those big chunk plays that, again, we're talking about you can't just give the ball to Ashton Jeanty anymore and he's going to run for 65, 70 yards. You are going to need some more quarterback play. And that's where I expect to see improvements in what I've seen, at least so far.
Has anyone stood out for that number 2 role?
I'd have to say Caleb Annette. Last season, we saw Max Cookforth. He came in, he got a couple of snaps, and even heading into spring, people kind of figured, Max Cookforth is going to be next guy up, and he absolutely could be. But redshirt freshman Caleb Annette, he's really impressed the coaching staff from what we've heard, and for as much as we can take any credence in the spring game and take anything out of it. But he had the most snaps in the spring game. I think he had 9 snaps. He completed 6 or 7 of those passes. And he looked clean. And, it's none of these quarterbacks, going to be pressing and Magson this season. And Spencer Danielson has said, it's not a decided, cut and dry thing. Like, they're going to go through the summer still figuring out who this is. But Max Cookforth, Caleb Annette are probably going to be your 2.
Well, let's move over to the running game. And before we do that, let me take a deep breath. This room will look to replace Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, unanimous 2024 and 2-time first-team all-conference player, Boise State single-season and career rushing yards leader, Heisman runner-up, and 6th overall pick, Ashton Jeanty. This room also graduated Tyler Crow. That leaves 4 guys returning in 2025 who recorded a snap or carry in 2024. We got glimpses of Breezy Dubar, Dylan Riley, Sire Gaines at different points of the season. Plus, they were able to add Malik Sherrod from Fresno State in the portal. What should we make of this deep running back room heading into 2025?
Also, just real quick, we have to give Jeanty as well. 2nd all-time single-season rushing, just 27 yards off Barry Sanders. I remember sitting in the press box against Portland State, early season FCS, And Jenksy has already rushed. I forgot the number now, but it's something stupid like 126 yards in the first half. And he didn't play for the whole second half. And I remember sitting there like, man, imagine if he falls short 20, 30 yards. And here we are. But hey, again, still incredible race. But no, you mentioned the guys who are stepping up now. It's Breezy Dubar, Isaiah Gaines, Dylan Riley. And I think those are kind of the three. Malik Sherrod, transfer from Fresno State. Those are the guys I think you're going to see the most of coming into this season, picking up those reps from Jenksy. And they gave acknowledge, I've chatted with Breezy Dubar. He says, I'm not asking Jenksy, we're not asking Jenksy. It's going to be running back by committee. But yeah, Sire Gaines, Breezy Dubar, Malik Sherrod, I would not be surprised to see their names plenty this coming year.
Of the running backs that were there this spring and practice, which one stood out the most for you?
It's got to be Malik Sherrod. He's scary. He's lightning in a bottle. It's just the pace that he can take off is... I mean, it's like this. It's 0 to 60. But yeah, no, it's impressive as well. Now, he's coming from Fresno State as well, and he had injury issues that it limits him to just 4 games. So for him to be able to come in and get off to such a hot start, he's impressing the coaching staff. The players love him. They say he's a trash talker, which you knew about him when he was at Fresno State, and you were like, "Oh, this guy kind of sucks." But once he's on your team, they love him. But yeah, he's a guy as well. He can catch out of the backfield. He's got oldest guy in the running back room now, so he's going to be carrying that leadership. So yeah, he may be new to the team, but I think Sherrod is going to slot right in. And special teams too. Not just go running back, not just go running game. We'll see him on special teams as well.
Well, heading into last season, there was a lot of buzz around Sire Gaines, but he was only able to play 3 games before suffering a season-ending injury. He was also not available during the spring. What can you tell our listeners about what ailed him during the season?
I really wish I could say more. I'd say it was a leg injury, basically against Portland State. So again, super early in the season. Got injured on the hip check. Injured his leg, no specifics were given. And yeah, we heard all season, with Boise State trying to work him back. He's getting there to the point where, there was a 3.5 week gap between the Mountain West Championship and the Fiesta Bowl. And they were like, yeah, he's going to be back for the Fiesta Bowl. And lo and behold, he wasn't. And again, he's not being able to participate in spring either. But yeah, it partly sounds like it's some sort of leg injury. You're not giving us details. We're seeing him walking around the facility. He's walking fine. It's not like he's hobbling. He's not like surgery. But I think it was partly to preserve that red shirt and partly just he wasn't ready to go.
Do you think he'll be 100% or be available for fall camp once that gets here?
I sure hope so. Again, we've been getting told he'll be ready. The latest we've been told is he should be good by June. And it's mid-May. So he's got time before we get to fall camp and stuff. And everything he's saying, even just how he looks, how he's acting, I'd be surprised if he wasn't ready and raring to go by the new season.
The prior season in 2023, we saw the Broncos kind of split the workload between George Alani and Ashton Jeanty. Last year, obviously, it was the Ashton Jeanty show. Given all the depth in this room, kind of what do you expect here in 2025? Do you think we're going to see, multiple backs, or do you think we're going to see another workhorse?
Yeah, it's kind of like a touch. It's multiple backs. It's running back by committee. I think the big 2 we're going to see is Sire Gaines and Breezy Dubar. Again, wouldn't be surprised if, we get Malik Sherrod in there for some passing plays, if we get Dylan Riley in there for some red zone, 1-2 yard kind of plays. But yeah, Sire Gaines, Breezy Dubar. And about a month ago, Breezy says that they both made a deal. We Ashton Jeanty last year made a bet to get to 2,000 yards. They want to get 1,000 each and split it between them, which more reasonable. If they can do that is a question. But I mean, hell, I can see them, both of them getting at least 600, 700 plus. And then again, we just go from there. Is it going to be a really run heavy offense, or are they going to try and lean into this 50-50, 60-40 passing game? But they both have the talent for it.
All right, it's early May, but if you had to guess now, who gets that first carry against South Florida in week 1?
I'm going to say Cy Gaines. I think he's next one up. I do. He's a redshirt freshman. He's just got that attitude. You can see it in him. You see the hunger in his eye. And hey, Ashton Jenty last year, he had a 2 yards loss on his first carry of the season. So if Cy Gaines gets pushed back, don't stress out. But yeah, Cy Gaines is my pick.
All right, let's move over to the wide receiving room. And there are several guys coming back for 2025, but this room did graduate Cam Camper. They also saw 5 guys hit the portal, one of which was Prince Strawn, who's now at USC. Between Camper and Strawn, we'll see 126 targets, 1,209 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns up for grabs in 2025. But like I said earlier, this room brings back a lot of talent from last year, and the staff didn't really add any transfers. I assume this means they feel very comfortable with the guys that they have in this room. So what are the expectations for this group heading into the season?
Firstly, I wish I could say he felt comfortable about the wide receiver room. I think the coaching staff acknowledges and they've said that they want to go out there in the portal still and get a mature, experienced receiver. What that looks like at this point, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, I mean, Luke, like you said, that's a lot of targets and receiving yards to make up. And you look at the top 3 receivers for Boise State last year. It was Cam Camper, who's now gone. Matt Lauser, who's a tight end, and then Latrell Caples, who's returning. So yeah, there's guys in that room with Austin Bolt, Ben Ford, Chase Penry, the guys who they've contributed. They can come in for a couple of snaps. I think it was Penry had some big plays in the Fiesta Bowl, but they're not guys who are going to be WR 1, 2, or 3. So yeah, I think this is probably the room with the most questions. And again, Prince Strong leaving. I thought he could have been him, Cam Bakes, Latrell Caples. They could have been the 3 going forward. Strong. His numbers weren't maybe where fans wanted him the last couple of years, but he's only going to be a junior. And this man, he's 6'5", he's athletic, he's fast. So that was such a shame to lose him for Boise State. But yeah, a lot of questions.
Did anyone stand out to you in the spring or really showing that connection with Maddox out there?
Yeah, Cam Bakes, guy I just briefly mentioned there. I think he's going to have a much more bigger role. He's only going to be a sophomore. As a freshman, he features along special teams. And firstly, that's something that this coaching staff, like many coaching staffs, they really appreciate. Guys who will just go on special teams and work their ass off. And that was Cam Bakes, but not just that. Just this spring, how he's showing, the connection with Magson, the speed. He's just all over the field as well. It's not like he's gonna, half-ass a play or see like the ball's not coming to him and stop his run. He's going to try and find some more space on the field, try and extend the play if possible. So yeah, I would expect Latrell Caples and Cam Bakes, honestly, to kind of be your big 2 this year.
Well, now that Jaguars wide receiver UDFA Cam Camper, he was their leading receiver for the team just a season ago. He's gone. Who do you think is going to step up and be the lead wide receiver for this offense in 2025?
To not bore you guys with Latrell and Cam, which I think Latrell will be wide receiver 1. But I think everyone is hoping for something else at Chris Marshall as well. I mean, this is a guy who he started at Texas A&M. He had 40-ish yards against Alabama as a freshman. He's kind of gone through some issues, and even during spring, he's had limited participation because of just constant soft muscle and tissue issues. But when he played for Boise State last year, again, he plays in 3 or 4 games and looked great. So if he can stay healthy, I know that Danielson really likes him. Again, that could be the guy who steps up, and then you have a Latrell, Cam Bakes, and a Chris Marshall top 3. But again, it's asking him to stay healthy, which is the big one.
If you were to describe how the tight ends are utilized in this offense to someone that's never caught a Broncos game, how would you describe it?
Tight ends, especially the last couple of years of Jenksy and running backs, utilize Grace both in passing game and running game. And we talk about how the tight ends work at Boise State. Matt Lauser is your 85-90% of the time guy. Matt Wagner comes in, does a great job, but it's Matt Lauser's position. He's the guy. He's a great downfield blocker. He's fine doing the dirty work. But if he makes a run underneath or those mid-range passes, he's a guy, he can catch the ball. And he's got a big kind of body as well to pick up yards. And I don't want to. I'm a Chiefs guy, lived in Kansas City for a decade. I don't want to call him Travis Kelce. But, he's a guy, he can catch the ball and he's got those quick hips and quick turns. And again, the red zone offense as well Boise State plays through the tight ends a lot. Lauser was the top touchdown receiver last year as well. The tight ends are heavily utilized in all phases of the game for BSU.
As we've talked before, Matt Lauder had a big season in 2024. He ranked second in the team in routes run, targets, receptions, receiving yards, and as you said, first in the teams in receiving touchdowns. His season was capped off by being named first team all-conference. It seemed much like the Mahomes to Kelce connection. Madsen, when he really needed somebody, like Lauder was his go-to guy. Mm-hmm. Given kind of the change in the wide receiver room, do you think there's even higher expectations for Matt here in 2025?
Yeah, I think his expectations are going to be, at least number-wise, which is 47 receptions, 613 yards, and those 7 touchdowns. I think he'll want to at least match, if not better, those numbers. We're talking about a guy, he's probably potentially, I think he could, and he's going to want to be looking at being drafted next April. He's a little bit of a smaller body than what NFL scouts like to see out of a tight end, but it's that versatility that he offers of catching, blocking, running. You've got Ashton Jenksy. You've got right now a questionable wide receiver room. And Lauser isn't afraid to run those out routes and get along the sideline either. This isn't a guy who's saying, just in the center of the field. So I would expect him to at least once and likely match this year's numbers, if not better.
A majority of this offensive line returns in 2025. The lone loss is a big one, though. First team all-conference, left guard, Ben Dooley. He's graduated. While there's room, loses one first-team all-conference player. It also brings back first-team all-conference in Cage Casey. In addition to Casey, this room looks to have plenty of depth as it returns 10 others who saw snaps last season. What are your expectations for this room heading into 2025?
Luke, it's going to be a fresh air to talk about such the strongest unit of the team. I feel like I've just spent the last 10 minutes kind of bashing on the poor wide receiver room, which is still great, no offense. But this is the strongest unit of the team coming back, I think. Like you said, you've got 4 of 5 returning starting guys, and the odd one else is Tyler Knaff, who, he started a bunch last season anyway because Roger Carrion was injured. He jumped over to play at right guard. And this is a offensive line. At the end of the day, we saw Ashton Jenksy did, but at the end of the day, he needed the offensive line to open those holes for him. And just the way that O-line can open holes, the fact they're returning basically a starting 5 with assuming, all of Knaff's experience. I don't see why they can't put a similar performance together and open those big holes for guys like Cy Gaines and Breezy to pick up those numbers and maybe get to 1,000 yards apiece.
Well, you talked about the early experience that Tyler Knaff had. Zach Holmes also got a lot of experience when center Mason Randolph went down. How do you think that those experience that Tyler and Zach got early in the season benefits this team coming into 2025?
Yeah, if you can take any sort of benefit out of injuries, it's going to be the experience given to guys who are next man up, right? We kind of just talked a little bit about Tyler. His pass blocking this season, I think, will really shine. We saw the sack numbers for Boise State. He didn't allow many sacks. I think it was something like 200 plus Kinghath went 200 plus opportunities about to sack this past season, and I think now that he's back on his favourite side, we'll see a lot more. And then for Zach Holmes, again, this is a guy who, like Dirk Cuss, I loved him last year. As a center, you're the leader of the team, and I think he really got comfortable in that position last year when Mason Randolph was out. So again, I think Mason Randolph is going to be the crux of that offensive line this coming season. So to have Randolph in that position and then Holmes right behind him, you couldn't ask for much better depth.
So then replacing first team all conference left guard Ben Dooley, Tyler?
Yeah, Tyler seems the obvious one. I think at that point you're talking about who's going to be the backup, and whether that's going to be Jake Steele, Miles Walker, the redshirt sophomore of Ohio State. Maybe he could plug in there. But yeah, Tyler Kinghath is going to be the obvious choice.
So with all these guys coming back, who does this room look to as their leader of this offensive line?
The guy just says Mason Randolph, that leadership. I feel like, and then Cage Casey, who, you mentioned at the start, Luke. I'll start with Casey just in that. I think, again, he has a legitimate case of being a first-round pick next year. If the line has another great year. He's one of the best pass protectors in the nation. And again, I think that's going to really shine this year when we're talking about an offense that isn't running the ball as much. So, he's already showed last year he can block the run and open the gaps. Now he's going to, if he can show that he can protect the pass, that's going to be great. Again, you can just tell he's an older guy, the leadership on the team. And then Mason Randolph, 6-year center. Even when he was out for most of last season, you always saw him around the facility. When he came back, you could immediately tell just the players look up to him. He's got that just infectious kind of energy that people love. So those are going to be your main two. And unfortunately, probably two guys who are only at Boise State for one more year.
All right, if you have to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who would that be?
It'll have to be Cy Gaines. I think it's the easy choice, purely just because of those injuries last year. I think if we were talking, he backed up Jenty, and Jenty still did Jenty things, but Gaines did well. Again, what's a breakout type of season? But the fact that you see the talent he has and the youth he has, and I think fans will really, really see it. And again, Ashton Jenty, his sophomore year, he only had about 1,400 yards, which only about. That's a stupid sentence. but yeah, it's, give Gaines a breakout year, 700-800 yards, build on it junior year, and take it from there.
Well, let's take a look at this defense. And those not familiar with Boise State's defensive scheme, how would you describe it?
Nickel heavy. Long nickel, 4-2-5. This is a team that at the end of the day, they want to put all of their best players on the field. And we saw them experiment with the nickel a little bit last season, especially with just all of the pressure that Eric Shinanga draws up. But, especially going into this season, Marion McCoy, the corner, he was expected to go, and because of the NCAA JUCO waiver, he can come back for one more year. So Boise State is like, well, okay, we got McCoy, we got Jeremiah Erie, and then we're going to put Devon Banks in the nickel. And again, you're getting three of your best, I guess, I don't want to say ball hawks, but, three very fast, agile players. And I don't think they're going to really turn away from that with the ability that Devon Banks has to dial up the pressure, his speed. Yeah.
Moving over to the defensive line, and they'll look to fill losses on the interior as the Broncos graduated 5 interior linemen. They also look to replace edge and 2-time first-team all-conference player and now Detroit line Ahmed Hassanin. This 2025 room is highlighted by the return of Braxton Feely on the interior and first-team all-conference edge Jaden Virgin Morgan. The duo combined for 19 sacks in 2024. Given the losses in this room, what should our expectations be in 2025?
Yeah, little bit of it's a weird mix of a little bit of the experience, but there's a lot of experience still coming back. I think Braxton Feely back, who momentarily entered the porcelain, came back is huge. Michael Magdre looked great. He was probably going to be a replacement, but again, is a guy behind Feely. But I really think, and I'm really high on Jason Virgin Morgan. He is the guy who he had the most sacks on the team this past year. Just I think it was one and a half more than Hassingin. And that was with the pair, obviously sharing the pressure, sharing the responsibility. But Chinander's not going to slow down with these pressure packages and getting to the quarterback. And JVM is going to be a huge part of that. So I can see him having kind of a similar, different kind of profile of body in person, but similar to a Hassingin 2023 season where he's just leading a team in sacks. But again, because the experience, because the losses in the interior. You lost Herbert Guns, a few other guys. Hassingin, of course. You've got Max Stiege coming on the edge. But the interior. We're looking at David Glass, who with from BYU has looked good. Deion Washington, who came from Hawaii, has looked good. They're probably your favourites to start in the interior. But it's guys with experience in the Mountain West, just not experience with the team, obviously. So just a little bit of question marks of what we'll see. But I don't think there's overly, too many causes for concern.
It sounds like Jaden Virgin Morgan's probably the guy on the outside there to kind of make a jump here in 2025. Is there a guy on the interior that you're excited to see and maybe he can make a jump in 2025?
Probably Michael Marjorie. We'll see how many reps he gets and, coming in for Braxton Feely. But, this is a guy, he's been with the team already for a year or two, a year, I should say. And he was looking really good even in the spring game because obviously Braxton Feely wasn't there. I believe he had a sack, if I remember. I'm excited for Michael Marjorie. And then I also just have to give a shout out as well. It's not the interior, but Jake Ripp. I think that's a guy who's really going to jump out as well. Oh, I guess we're talking about linebackers, and after this, it's fine. But yeah.
Well, this linebacker room looked pretty good on paper. Yeah. Andrew Simpson, who played a room's best 42 snaps per game last season, is off to the portal. However, the team brings back first-team all-conference linebacker Marco Notriani. There are plenty of guys in this room with Marco, but it kind of lacks some of that experience. Who's ready to step up into Simpson's vacated role?
I don't know. I wonder. I'm kidding. Jake Ripp. Now I get to talk about him. He's really impressed at linebacker this spring. And I think this is a guy as well. Like the coaching staff is just really impressed with him in that. He came to Boise State as a linebacker. He was behind Nutriani. He was behind Andrew Simpson, who entered the transfer portal. He was expected to stay. So last season, Jake Ripp, he was getting reps at getting reps at edge. He was coming in at edge occasionally, and he was looking good. But now that Simpson has left, Jake Ripp has kind of slotted back into that role, and Danielson has said that that's going to be his primary position moving forward. And he's looked great too. He's got the experience. He's got plenty of minutes under his belt. Again, a couple of sacks in the spring game for what you can take that for. And if it's not Jake Ripp, Chase Martin, I've heard, I think Chase Martin could be in the mix as well, but most of his experience is on the special teams, which is why I think Ripp could have the advantage at least going into the season.
This defensive backfield returns a good core of guys from last season, but this team will be looking for someone to create some pressure on the opposing quarterbacks like Seyo Oladipo and Rodney Robinson were able to last season. Those two created 31 pressures and 11 sacks a year ago. Who does this room turn to in an effort to fill that type of production?
Devon Banks at nickel, I can honestly see kind of rushing down the sides. He's got the speed, like I said, and he's very twitchy. I think some of the issues that he had when he was a corner was, the ball over his shoulder, over his head. He sometimes lose track of the ball. He lose track of his man. But if he's just got his eyes forward, pressure, feels in front of him, I can see him being dialed up to, get a lot of pressure out of the secondary there. Otherwise, maybe a little bit of a crazy shout. I don't know. Ty Benefield. Again, you can just see just the confidence growing in him as well. And he was his first couple of years a little bit, I don't want to say robotic, but like very good at what he could do. But he almost scared to make a mistake, or was like, this is how you play this position, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I think you're seeing the end of this past season and through the spring, and as he's now getting older, he's a little bit looser, a little bit more freedom. So I can really see him, kind of rushing right down the middle, kind of spying, waiting for those any sorts of opportunities to get through the gaps. And I can see Benefield dialing up some good pressure.
Well, Alexander Tubner was another key piece for this defense last year, who seemed to kind of play his best in the biggest games, but he's lost to graduation. Who do you think this defense or the secondary will turn to in hopes to not only fill his production, but his leadership?
Yeah, the leadership is going to come out of Ty Benefield. Again, I just think he's going to be the guy leading everyone back there at this point in the backfield. But as for replacing him in that production, Zion Washington, I think, is ready to come in as well. He's a guy just because of Tubner. He kind of fans maybe weren't as aware of him, but I think this season, I shouldn't even say that because he has so much experience from last season where he started and played in, I think, 13 to 14 games because either, Tubner was injured, Tubner was ejected for targeting twice. So, he had to come in and pick up that, not slack, but pick up the role, a decent amount last season. So I don't think it's Tubner, he was obviously such a character, such a leader on that team, and there will be a drop off. But Zion Washington is a fine replacement production-wise for him.
Corner looks to kind of be a strength of this team. They were really good last year, and you returned McCoy and Irby. What's the future hold for them here coming in 2025?
The thing I'd like to see is better pass defense. I feel like because they're dialing up so much pressure, the excuses maybe say, we're getting the quarterback so much and we're hurrying and we're getting tackles behind the line of scrimmage that we are going to give up some big plays over the top. Which sure I get. But this is a defense that 2023 they ranked 106th in the nation for pass defense. 2024 107th for pass defense. And at the end of the day, that might work in the Mountain West. But this is a program at the end of the day that, as difficult as it may be, wants to return to the college football playoff and face these big teams. And if you have a mediocre pass defense when you come up against someone like Penn State, that's where it really starts to show. So I'd like to see improvements in that department specifically for 2025.
So we've kind of broken down each room here on the defense. So Sean, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
It's got to be like JVM, Virgin Morgan. I think without Hassanine, Hassanine was kind of a great mentor for him, not just great mentor, but a great distraction on the field because you were just two guys who you couldn't handle both of them. And I think JVM is going to have to make that step up this season to kind of carry that burden that Hassanine did in 23. And I think, he's capable. So he's my guy.
Well, moving over to the special teams, last year was a big strength of this team, but they lose both the kicker Dalmas and JFR at punter. How did those units look in the spring, and are there any concerns?
Yeah, I think Justice, I'd have to disagree with you a little bit too. The special teams last year for me were just, taking out the Oregon game, because special teams lost the Oregon game for them last year with the 85-yard punt return, the 100-yard kickoff return. It's a 37-34 game. If that doesn't happen, Boise State is walking out to Eugene with a win. But even outside of that, this is a team where outside of the kickoff return, they didn't look good. They get caught on the outside way too often by opposing teams. You see like 5 BSU players all run to one side of the field, player who just returns, switch the fields, and be gone. But let's get back to your point. Yeah, they've lost James Ferguson Reynolds, of course, to Oregon. And they brought in Oscar Doyle. He's another Aussie punter out of Weber State. I think we've not seen anything of him yet because he came in after spring practice and the spring game and stuff. But looking at the numbers, he was a top 10 for FCF punter of the year. Seems to have a similar leg to JFR, maybe even a little bit better accuracy. But again, it's FCS, so don't want to read too much into it, of course. And then, they lose Joe Nadolmus, who, Boise State legends, I guess. He's highest point scorer in school history. He's from Boise. He was a 6-year guy. His numbers kind of dropped year by year for his last couple of years. But still, replacing him's tough. They brought in Colton Boomer from UCF. But again, this is a guy who he's not going to arrive till the spring. So when we're talking about special teams, the players themselves, Stacey Collins, the special teams coach, he said, we're working on every single facet of the game. We're trying, every guy is, trying every position on special teams. You've got starters saying, hey, we know last year wasn't good enough. I don't care if I'm the starting wide receiver. If I need to start special teams, I will. So this is the kind of stuff we're hearing. Those are the improvements. It's very much up in the air because, we've seen what Colton Boomer can do at UCF. He hit a game-winning field goal on the blue in 2023, so BSU fans are familiar with him. We'll see.
Now that spring practice is over, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into the 2025 season?
It's got to be wide receiver. And you guys kind of heard. I won't bore everyone too much about it, but basically, I think last year Boise State could get away with less of a passing game because Cam Camper was there when you needed him, and then Ashton Jeanty was just a freak of nature. But assuming that running game isn't as strong, they're going to need consistent receivers to step up. And like I said, right now, I think the big thing that the coaching staff has said they want is an experienced, mature receiver.
In today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, how have you seen that change Boise State's recruiting philosophy?
Yeah, it's tough for me to say as well because, it was my first year on the beat. But if anything for Boise State, I mean, both ways, honestly, I think right now, one of the tough things is keeping players. I think he did a really good job. I mean, they kept Ashton Jeanty last year, but I think he was a unique case, of course. But on the flip side, you've lost Andrew Simpson, you've lost James Ferguson Reynolds, almost lost Braxton Feely, and I mean, Spencer Danielson presided over his wedding. Like, he had it close and he almost left. So there's that side of things. But even with the NIL for Boise State recruiting, I don't think Boise State can compete with the big boys. Well, I know they can't. Dirk Cutter said after this past season, teams offering 2 to 10 times more than what Boise State can offer. Literally right after the Fiesta Bowl, apparently someone, this was from Dirk Cutter, he didn't say who the person was, but he said someone from Oregon offers a BSU player $700K. Obviously, a BSU player did just go to Oregon. Not sure if it was JFR, of course, but it was someone from Oregon. And I know Boise State's pool this past year for NIL was $2 million. UCF last season was 12.5. You look at the big boys like Texas, 22 mil. It's just, it's such a goal thing. You guys know it. I mean, you guys literally covered Group of 5. It's a tough place to be. I think Boise State is probably better than most just because, they have the pull of the history and the blue and the fact they are literally the winningest team in college football history. And you've got the Pac-12 next year. And there's a lot of good stuff going for Boise State compared to a lot of other teams in Group of 5 who I'm sure it's, tenfold worse.
And they just got done with that video board before the season, right? That big video board, is that going to be for this season?
The big one's been up there for a couple of years now.
Okay.
It's the biggest in the Mountain West, and I believe that's now been there for. This will be coming as the third season. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, how do you feel that the staff here at Boise State's doing navigating the portal?
I mean, I think they've addressed needs that they've needed. I think Malik Shiraz was kind of the big, exciting, flashy one they brought in. But even then, they brought in some exciting names like Jaden Mickey from Notre Dame and Miles Walker, Ohio State. Ex guys who we didn't see them play at a college level, and of course, they might have. It might be a similar case to Malachi Nelson, USC, Boise State, UTEP. But that's another example. At the end of the day, Malachi Nelson was a name who he was a 5-star recruit. He was number one quarterback recruit in his class. So I think the coaching staff does have the pull. It's just now whether can they identify the correct players and keep doing that moving forward.
What do you think the main strength of this 2025 team is?
Same as 24. It's the offensive line, the running game. I think it's hard to turn away from. I think, with side gains and then a mix of, Breezy and Sherrod, your experience of the offensive line. You guys have heard me rave about it. I think it's going to be, again, a very similar experience for Boise State fans outside of being able to cheer on a Heisman candidate, which I guess is fun, but it'll still be a fun year.
So last season, 12-2, 7 run the table there in the Mountain West. Group of 5 representative, number 3 seed, get the bye. What does success look like for the Broncos in 2025?
This is going to be weird for me to say as well, because I've always been part of the crowd of, you can't win every year. Don't get annoyed if your team isn't winning every year. Heck, I'm a Liverpool soccer fan. I went through many years of not winning before we finally started winning. And when we did start winning, I was like, oh, well, we might not win it next season, and it's fine. But with saying that, I do think a Mountain West Championship is kind of the expectation for Boise State again, if you want to call it a successful season. And I say that, and when I heard this question, I kind of thought, making the championship and losing, again, you can't win every year. But we're talking about a team that they just gave Spencer Danielson a contract extension till 2029. He doubles his salary from about 1.1 million a year to 2 million a year. So already the expectations jumped from there. Then you just look at the rest of the Mountain West. I mean, I know like UNLV just got Dan Mullen in, but I mean, the exodus of transfers got left. You bring all these transfers in. Maybe Dan Mullen will pull off a miracle, but I don't see UNLV suddenly becoming this, challenging Boise State again. I think it'll be a little bit of a drop off for a year or two. But obviously, UNLV does have kind of that NIL money behind them, so we'll see there. But even you look at the rest of the conference, I mean, San Jose State, but even then, they've lost a bunch of guys. They lost Triple Crown winning Nick Nash. I just look at the conference this year, and Boise State just even more than last year. Well, I don't see even more than last year because of Ashton Jeanty, but when you look at the conference as a whole, they seem primed to, if not make a championship, they should win it. And then, if they don't make a CFP, that's obviously up to a committee and this and that. If they have to settle for a bowl game just below it, it sucks, but obviously that's out of their control.
And to your point, they've got the number 1 returning production in the Mountain West Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're looking ahead to like, hey, can we get that CFB position? They're top 25, maybe top 10 in returning FBS production to their team. So while they might not look like it, come the season because you lose Ashton Jeanty, like they've got a lot of really good talent on this roster.
Yeah, of course. And, the only thing that kind of makes me hesitate as well is, it's things like last year when Boise State went up to Wyoming. Going to Wyoming, mile plus high. It's a tough place to play, but Ashton Jeanty dug him out of the dirt. If it wasn't for Ashton Jeanty in that game, they could have left Laramie with a loss, and the CFP hopes are out the window. San Jose State, it was looking, I think they were down by 2 scores plus at one point early in the game. They found a way to get back into games, but you're finding ways to get back into games with Barry Sanders, regen.
And to your point, like Like Hawaii, that was a scare
Yeah,
in the
Hawaii.
first half.
Yeah, exactly.
They really bottled him up. So
Yeah, so it's stuff like that, in the Mountain West, and especially when you're talking about these tough places to go, whether it's a long flight to Hawaii or whether it's a damn mile in the sky in Laramie. It's tough places to go, and freaky stuff happens. And if Boise State loses to, San Diego State in November, that's CFP hope's gone. It can go like that. So, yeah, again, I think it might take another, and we saw it this past season with, as Boise State and Tulane and Army and Navy, and the second the team lost, it was like, oh, sorry, like your chances are gone. And Boise State just happened to be a team where their only loss was a very good loss. But again, if they lose against Notre Dame this coming season, and then lose against, again, Colorado State or an Air Force or something, CFP's gone.
Well, Sean, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Boise State Broncos football team?
Man, I think we covered it all. This was great. I appreciate you guys talking Boise State ball with me. It's been a little while with since the draft. I was getting a little bit of withdrawals, so I appreciate it.
no problem. Sean, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it.
Cheers, fellas.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.